Hi everybody, it's Annette from The Art of Intuition, and today we are going to talk about what we believe and why we believe it. When we first start making our shift into fifth dimensional consciousness, and then we start moving into building our realities in fifth dimensional consciousness, there is a place we get to where we realize everything we believed starts to not make a lot of sense, right? And then we go farther into our ascension process, and we even see more of a disbelief in our human existence, in what we believed in that human consciousness. But then it kind of starts to flip in the sense, whereas before, when we were looking at people who might have been in a different part of their awakening or ascension, we thought that was crazy. Like fifth dimension, that's weird, or multidimensionality, galactic aspects, telepathy. That sounds crazy to me, right? Like, how can that be real? How can any of what that seems like very woo-woo stuff, it feels like it doesn't make any sense. And then we get to the other side and we look back at our human experience and we sit there and go like, holy crap, I can't believe I used to believe that. I can't believe that is the most bizarre thing I've ever heard. Because we start to kind of see the cracks in the whole thing. And there is that intermediate part, there's a bridge part where you're kind of don't know which one to believe. One feels kind of, the fifth dimension might feel a lot of kind of woo-woo, crazy, it's crazy town. And then we go back and look at our human world, but that seems to be fading too. So we're looking at one thing emerging and one thing kind of fading away. And when our human world starts to fade away, we can feel a very disjointedness for a while. Because we kind of have one foot planted, but you really can't plant so much in 5D realities and above because they shift so much as you go. And we're trying to learn how to navigate them, and we don't have a map for them. We just remember how we used to live when we were not really encapsulated by the human body, when we weren't really trapped, in a sense, in a human, very disjointed existence. So we go through so many different iterations of ourselves, trying to figure out what's real and what's not. And what do we believe and what we don't believe. And when you start to really look at some of the human consciousness beliefs, and that's a couple things. We're just going to hit on a couple today, just to kind of shed some, we're going to just put a little consciousness around it. And why, when people say these things, it sounds absolutely ridiculous. But when we start talking about fifth dimensional consciousness, it feels like that whatever side you're on, it doesn't really matter, because we're never going to do sides on this channel. We don't talk about what's right, what's wrong. Everyone's where they're supposed to be. Everyone's in the consciousness they are rooted in right now. And when it's their time to move out of it, they move out of it. But you're going to find, you're going to be looking back at different points of your journey and start to see, well, wow, that really is nuts. And when you're around people that are really still very entrenched in their human aspect and very entrenched in their human consciousness, how nutty it seems to feel. But not nutty in a judgmental way, but you just look at it and go like, I can't believe I believe that, or I can't believe that even makes any sense. So when you look at a lot of things that have gone on, especially, we had the COVID realities, that we can look at it from one perspective of how much they kind of pushed everyone inside, how much they pulled everyone away from a lot of their human attachments and made them go out on their own. They either made them deal with relationships they had within the home because you couldn't go anywhere else. They made you deal with being by yourself if you didn't live with anybody. They took you away from things that you might not have even wanted to do, but you were still doing them out of obligation. So it kind of segregated the world. When you look at it from a human perspective, everything that was really rooted in ascension, as far as, and we've talked a little bit on this channel about when you get into these types of, air quote, epidemic, when everyone starts getting affected the same way by something, it becomes a pandemic, right? When everyone starts going through, different collectives start hitting the same, same physical, I don't like the word symptoms, but the same physical I guess I'll use symptoms. I can't get another one right now. We start getting those physical things going on, and it's a lot of people getting the same types of clearings. That's probably the word I want to use. All of a sudden, the human world is going to label it as something else, right? And when you hear people talk about that from a higher perspective, if you're still entrenched in your human thinking, you're going to say, well, that's ridiculous. Obviously, it was, it's something else. Obviously, it's not just the collective's clearing something, it's something else. We go through and then absolutely everything that had happened to anyone physically in that time frame, and you still see that going on, has to do with COVID. Has to do with what, I don't care what the symptom is, I don't care what it is, that's what it is. You saw the same thing before when we were going through we talk about Lyme disease. And I usually don't like to talk about human labels on stuff, but just to kind of get the point across with some of the stuff we see and some of the misconceptions on what really goes on is that every symptom people can have. And I've seen people talk about everything known to man and beyond. It doesn't matter what it is. It came from getting bitten by some microscopic tick somewhere along the way. And everyone looks at that and says, yeah, that makes sense. When you're in the human consciousness, you're like, yeah, okay, that's obviously what happened. And it doesn't matter what the symptom is. It is anything you can think of, and a lot of that was put in place to kind of try to alienate us from nature too. And a lot of the human consciousness stuff is to alienate us from wanting to be outside. And if you're going to be outside, take all these chemicals to protect yourself from all this stuff outside. So you start to kind of see how a lot of it perpetrates around, and it continues to feed itself. It's kind of the snake that eats itself over and over again. I can't even think of the word. Can't even think of the word. It was there and then it was gone. But we start to look at these things and go, wow, that really is kind of weird that I would believe that, right? It's kind of like no one asks for any other explanations. But when we're in that human consciousness, we believe some pretty outlandish stuff. We believe that everything is okay if one person tells us it's okay. If a doctor tells us it's this, we believe that. If anyone we see as a seat of power, anyone we see who has more information than we do, we believe whatever it is. I don't care how outlandish it is. We'll sit there and go, that makes sense. Yeah, I can see how that could be happening. But when we flip it and we get to the other side, and if someone says that's just your ascension process, you're clearing something, that's you're getting your body's frequency to the next level, that is looked at as, well, how can that be true? That's crazy talk. So the purpose of this one is to really look at the most outlandish things. Sometimes it's kind of fun to go back and look at, no matter where you are. And usually if you're watching these, you're not rooted in human consciousness anymore. You're starting to make your way, and you're sort of your awakening. You're starting your ascension process. You're starting to detach from the human realities, because even if it wasn't something that happened directly, like if you were starting to have a lot of physical symptoms but nothing was really working in the human reality, so you started going over to some more homeopathic paths, some more natural paths, looking at a lot of different stuff that wasn't mainstream human consciousness, let's just say it like that, human consciousness, medical stuff, right? When you start doing a lot of that stuff, when you start moving over into getting into some different paths to take, that's a big part of a lot of people's awakening, a big part of a lot of people's ascension. And it's really just disillusionment with human realities. And it can even be on the other side where, your relationships doesn't work anymore. None of your jobs are working. Something I wanted, I almost had everything I thought I always wanted, and then it all collapsed around me. I mean, that was what had happened to me. And you get other people who get everything they thought they wanted, but they're still sitting there and they're not really happy with what they have. Because that's not really what they wanted. It's what they wanted on a human level and not what they wanted on a soul level. So until we can get to soul-aligned realities, nothing our human does is going to make any sense. Nothing our human does is going to make us happy. But because that world seems so outlandish to us when we're on the other side of it, when we're still in that little bit entrenched in that human consciousness, when we look at all that stuff, when we turn around and really take our time to really look at it, and look at all the fifth dimensional stuff and above, and sixth dimensional, anything I've said on this channel, you know, eight dimensional, ninth dimensional, 10th dimensional, 12th dimensional, when we're in certain parts of the process, it seems outlandish. It just seems like this is the most outlandish thing I've ever heard. Even if you're setting in the sixth dimension, and I start talking about something that's in the eighth or ninth dimension, like rearranging all your realities, nothing's going to look the same. You might start having a lot of physical stuff going on. A lot of people, well, most people, I don't know anyone that can still be at certain parts of the process and still eat meat anymore. For a lot of people, they don't take part in a lot of the human stuff anymore. Sex is one of those things that's a very human thing that a lot of people will sidestep for a while because there's a lot of other things going on, and their sexual energy turns into creator energy. But if you're not in that space, even if you're in the fifth and sixth dimension, but you're still not there yet in any of the other things I just mentioned, you're still going to feel like that's outrageous. So no matter where we are, the next steps to us are always going to feel crazy because they're going to feel so disconnected from where we are. We can't even fathom that stuff yet. But when we look back, we have a little bit clearer picture on the stuff we used to really believe and really entrench in that now seems just ridiculous. You know, the whole financial system seems ridiculous to us. When anyone says, well, wait and let me tell you what you're supposed to do, that's ridiculous to us at a certain point in our process because we don't wait and listen for what anyone else has to say about what we should do. You know, if we're doing that, we understand we've now given our power away to that person. And there are some times when we might outsource consciousness in a sense to activate ourselves more, but it's more of a knowing we're doing that to help us remember something, to trigger more remembrance for us, to help us get our vibration to a certain level, to clear something, to get our own remembrances about something. But we're not giving our power away. We switch more into, we know we're doing more of a partnership. There'll be times when we do give our power away to those things and we learn not to do it, right? And then we start to get into a different place where we've done that before and we stop doing it. Just like we gave our power away in the third dimensional human consciousness realities, we kind of start doing it in the fifth dimensional consciousness realities a little bit because you don't feel like we know enough, right? So a lot of times we might get really wrapped up in different spirituality things. You might really get wrapped up in different partnerships with people and we feel like they know more than we do. You know, they're farther along in their journey than me, they're more connected than me, they know more than I know. So I'm gonna give them a little bit more of, let them decide what they want to do. I'll go ahead and I know I was in something similar to that where I kind of was doing all the work and the other person was just kind of floating along, but was willing to take all the kudos for everything that was getting done, but didn't actually want to do anything. But that was what they were there to show me, you know, and if I'm going to keep going down this path, they're going to continue to do that. And then it's up to me to say, no, I'm kind of done. Either you're going to put in 100% with me or we're not going to continue to do this anymore. And most of the time, once you say I'm done with it, the reality just immediately, I was always shocked at how quick the reality went away. You know, it was like that and it was gone. Or you would think, oh, it would take forever to get out of this. Oh no, it's over. It was over. I blinked and the whole thing fell away. That's how, when you're in those really distorted timelines, how quickly they dissolve. The minute you say no more, the whole thing goes away, which really gets us into a belief of how shaky they are to begin with. And the only ones that keep us rooted in them is our belief that they're real. So when we're in our human realities and we've entrenched in them, like really, really entrenched in them, and we say, wow, those took a long time to fade away because we were the ones keeping it in place. We were the ones that continued to play the roles out. We were the ones that continued to be disempowered. We were the ones that continued to try to rule over somebody else. We were the ones that continued to do that. We are always the reason it goes quick or it goes slow. Once we get to certain places and realize we can turn this reality around on a dime, we can close it out, we can shut it down on a dime, and the minute we realize the distortion and the part we're playing in it, it's over. The whole reality will come down around you so fast, you will have whiplash as to how fast it goes away. I can remember doing a lot of different, feeling that it was time for me to do certain things. And I remember thinking, oh, that reality, it'll take forever to get here. And I could have been working toward a certain reality for maybe years or months. And I would see not a hint of it. And then you get to this point where it just all arrives at one time. And you're almost sitting there and you can't even believe it that, oh my gosh, there it is. there's a part of it where I've been waiting on it for so long, and there's a part where like, wow, I really thought that was gonna, at this point I thought the actual, when it all came in at one time, it was gonna take longer. But we've done so much of the prep work as to laying down the foundation of those realities that when they do come in, they come in very quickly. And then they're either gonna help us clear something else, or they're gonna help us build something else. And even if they're helping us clear something else, they're still helping us build something toward the future, because what they're helping us clear, we can't take with us. We're not able to take that with us to the next place. That's not what we're supposed to do. All this stuff we're clearing, that's really all our experiences are, really all our memories are. They're just old realities we set up to clear something, to get us to the next space, to let us see what's soul aligned, to get us to what decision are you going to make? A human consciousness decision or a soul aligned decision? Are you going to be a higher self or a human self? Which one are you going to choose here? Every choice you make in your life, in this existence, that's your decision. It's very simple. Am I human? Am I higher self? There's a lot in the human consciousness. When you're entrenched in that, you don't know there's a difference. When you get to certain places in your ascension, you start to see there's a difference. Which one am I going to be? And we still sometimes might say, make the human choice. Then we just create a whole karmic reality to go through to clear it a different way. Because something was in our way of clearing it. We were holding on to something we thought we needed from that human choice. What we wanted out of that reality. We were not ready to make the higher self choice. We were either going to be conscious or we were going to be unconscious. And those were the choices we had. And what we choose to believe in that moment. I'll always say one of the key phrases I know, and when I used to say it, and sometimes I'll still catch myself saying it about one thing or the other. If you think that's the only reality, or you think that's how it has to be, or that's the only way, and there's no other reality, totally unconscious. I'm totally unconscious in that moment when I hear my inner monologue say that. Well, that's the only one, or that's how that's got to be. That's how that's always going to be. That's how it is in this second, in this timeline. That doesn't mean another timeline, it's that way. We open this talking about what we believe and how multidimensionality, people watch it in a movie and think it's fun and interesting. In a human consciousness, you look at that as an actual real consciousness and you think, well, that doesn't make any sense. That can't be it. I'm the only one here. Our human wants to always believe we're the only one here. I'm the only one of me. There's nothing else going on here. When you start getting deeper into your ascension process, you see there's so much more going on here. There's so many aspects of me. There's so many things I have to embody, so many things I have to clear, so many realities I got to clear up. And then I got to rearrange everything and build it again from a soul-aligned reality. But when we're in our human consciousness, we don't know what that is. So we go through a lot of iterations trying to figure that one out. Which one are we going to choose? It goes back to the old adage, it's in a way, the angel and the devil on your shoulder. Which one? Which one are you going to listen to today? Which one is the higher consciousness way? It's either, is it a choice we're going to make out of love or a choice we're going to make out of fear? Which one are we going to do? Or am I going to have to, if I choose the fear one, I'm going to create a whole reality because the transmission of that frequency is fear. So now I got to create a whole reality to clear that fear because that's what I'm transmitting out. That's what I'm choosing to believe. And that's going to create the reality around me. Once we start to realize that I don't have to make that choice, there's a billion different choices. There's a billion different concepts that we can get into. But we don't believe that. Not really. Not in certain parts of our process. We just don't believe it. We feel like there's only one. So really hone in on what are the most outlandish things you believe in the human consciousness realities. Because when you're in a different consciousness, looking down on other places you've been, it's a lot easier to unravel it. You can't really look up because you don't have the consciousness to pick out the ones you don't really understand yet. You'll get there. We all get there. There's some I will still see and be like, yeah, I don't know about that. When I get there, I'll be there, but there's some I'm like, I don't know. I don't know how that's going to go. Because you also still have a lot of fear around that stuff. And you have a lot of fear around, wow, when I get to that spot, am I gonna really feel like none of this is necessary? Because you still have attachment to, even when you're in different parts of your ascension, you can get attached to that part of it. And whatever it is that you're doing. And whatever it is you are trying to accomplish or whatever you feel like your journey is in that moment. So no matter where you are, there's going to be some of that. So you're either going to clear that fear on your own, or you're going to create an experience to clear that fear. Because the more choices you make out of fear, the more you're going to create those experiences to then clear the fear kind of the old-fashioned way, through the physical reality. Normally, once we start going in the reality, and you know, after so many iterations of the reality, you start to figure it out that I made this choice here, and now I've enacted this over here, so now I'm going to go through this. You almost can shut the reality down early, close it out early, because you know what you're doing. You know, you're not sitting there like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. I know exactly what I'm doing, because I've done it 15 times before. I don't need to go through this for 2 years. I don't need to go through any of this. I can shift this, get out of this, shut this down from my highest place, and I don't have to go through the whole thing. So there's going to be a lot of different iterations of that. Looking at the things you used to believe and realizing how incredibly crazy and I just did a couple of examples of things I hear now, and people will say that makes total sense. In that consciousness, it does. You know, in that consciousness, that does make total sense. And in the other consciousness above that, it's not going to make any sense, and it feels ludicrous. But it does give you an idea of how much you're going to shift and change, how much you're going to start to really see the old human stuff fall away. And that opens you up, because you're also clearing all those templates. That's another part of that. You're clearing all the templates from your body because you don't believe any of this stuff anymore. It's ridiculous. So all that, those template clearing will go that way. The template wipes go that way, because you no longer are rooted into those realities. You don't believe them anymore. You realize that's ridiculous. It's almost as ridiculous as what's going on over here sometimes, but this is just really ridiculous, because that doesn't even make any sense. I can remember some things that were told to me that I believed, and you just have to laugh about it, and how disempowering the human realities can be, and how we would just put our faith into everybody else because they feel like they have so much more going on, or they understand so much more than we do. And it is a big awakening for a lot of us, when no matter who the person is, when you realize they really know more don't know any more than you do. In that consciousness, they're no idea what's going on either, and we're putting all our faith in that, and you really have no idea. So now we can laugh about it. Wasn't so funny at the time, and now we go back and we kind of can chuckle about it. So make a list of the things you used to believe. Really look at what you used to believe, what you really used to really kind of nest into and really entrench into. You know, that's how it is. It's everyone else's fault, you know, because this is how it has to go. This is how it has to be. So, okay. Keep practicing the art of intuition.